senators, their per capita income is about 75% higher than in New York City. In New York City, for example, the per capita income is about $66.96. In Westchester, it's $9,100. In Nassau, it's $88.41. And they make their living here. So these people, the executives on Wall Street, those in the banks, and the major and lesser corporate owners, they're not taking the beating that the people we represent are taking, and the working class and the lower middle class people are taking in the city of New York. So I have to, bring out the fact that the kids, the senior citizens, working mothers who depend on daycare centers, to be able to work, have to live in the fear and insecurity of those centers being closed down. And we estimated, because it's not a science, I discovered, Senator, you learn quite a bit in this crisis, we discovered that bankruptcy is not a science. Nobody knows what the hell it really is. But we discovered that it's definitely not a science, so we get a conservative and a liberal figure of what would have happened to the workforce if bankruptcy ensued, and we get up to 100,000 more city employees laid off. And what it means to the service of the citizens in New York who need it, it becomes another tragedy. Those who have to, use the hospital clinics, the working mothers in the daycare centers, the senior citizens who are trapped in their homes and waiting for homemaker service, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. Other points that do distress me, the business of, municipal workers not working at their jobs, and the tremendous editorial feast the newspapers have been having. Well, I think you visited one of the firehouses, you went through Bellevue Hospital, you went on a sanitation truck. We don't deny that there are goof-offs and there are difficulties, but in the main, we think our members work and want to work. And yet, given the terrible demoralization, the scapegoat aspects of the press and the media, it's a miracle that there is any morale left and any drive to work. I would submit that in our city, the workforce is perhaps as good or as bad as any other workforce in the country. I am not about to boast of productivity in local government, the worker involvement in their jobs. I think it's a mess. I think attention has not been paid to this. I don't believe, by the way, that we ought to just talk of worker output, nor do I want to wrap managerial input. I think we have to look at that workplace and a workforce of some 13, 14 million of local government workers, and know that enough attention has not been paid. They've been made the scapegoats, and I think labor and management has to look at that problem, and I say government. The federal government has to look at it too. This union has stated, and I know my colleagues join me in this, that we stated to Mayor Koch, now that the negotiations are over, we'd like to jointly work out a labor management council with him that would look at the whole question of efficient service to the citizens, cost efficiency included, worker involvement, worker satisfaction. We'd like him to get in the best industrial engineer he could find and work with us on this. We think it's terribly important, and we'd like it done. But I would submit to you that in this area we do not differ. We do not differ from many of the other communities. We've heard of the outlandish fringes and wages in New York. Jack has the overall figures, but since the chairman of the committee was from Wisconsin, I just took some comparisons with Madison and Milwaukee, and it was fascinating. Really fascinating, Mr. Senator. Your clerks, librarians, nurses' aides, accountants, almost all your professionals do far better in Milwaukee and Madison than they do in New York City. I found that in Milwaukee they were doing better than they were doing in Madison, except for accountants. Accountants, by the way, do better in Madison than in Milwaukee. I think that's because Madison is the capital of the state, and accountants do very well where government presides. But we just looked at that as a random sampling. Jack has much more than I do, not to prove one thing or the other, but to really confront the exaggerated criticisms of the overall total compensation of the New York workers as against workers throughout the country. It's very easy to extract from anybody's contract, and I do mean anybody in the public or private sector, 4 or 5 points that seem outlandish, and then you discover that the workforce, for whatever reason, gave up something else to get what would be considered an exaggerated benefit. So that I'd like to talk against that. Senator, I just really want to conclude on one point, and one final point, if I may. I really don't like being here. I hate like hell coming back. We don't enjoy it. It makes little or no sense. The whole fiscal crisis is an area where I've been surrounded by consultants as a labor leader and depend on them. Jack here is one of them. Jack Beagle is one of the consultants. This union has spent almost $250,000, $250,000 getting advice from Fried Frank, other consultants, the National Union, etc. But in the final analysis, when it comes for all of us to make the decision of investing $2.5 billion of retirement funds, the buck has to stop with us. There's no question about it. We've got to make that decision. And the decision didn't come easy. We really had to make it on the basis that we just couldn't shoot crap, not only with the working lives of our members, the retiree lives, but with the citizens of the city of New York. We just couldn't shoot crap with it, Senator. And we involved ourselves, and we think we made some very strong commitments. But I would appeal to you and to beg of you that with the same sensitivity and understanding, and I know you are a man of sensitivity and understanding, that we all not roll the dice or shoot craps. It's just too big and too important. That we look at it from the point of view that nobody ought to take a risk with a city as important as New York and a population of 8 million. I think it was Senator Schmidt who said that, and he sort of wanted to let everybody know that he recognized New York was indeed an important city. He didn't have to be told that. And then he went into something, and I found myself disturbed as he did it. Because while one would expect that he was paying tribute to New York and its importance and its meaning, I was wondering what disturbed me. And I guess what disturbed me, Senator, is that he still made it sound as though New York was separate and unique and not part of the socio-political economic system of this United States. I think we are. I think we're a broad social meaning to this United States. I would like Senator Schmidt to consider New York as his in a very real sense, as I would like you to consider it, and as we should consider difficulties in Wisconsin or New Mexico as our problem. And if we fail in this, we fail of purpose. So, Senator, we're here to be constructive, and we want to help. And we have a constituency that's taken a beating. But that constituency is part of the meaning and life of New York City. and we're not going to shoot craps with them or with New York City. We're going to participate to the hilt, and we really are going to be and continue to be a constructive force. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gotbaum, for an excellent